All right, so now let's talk about Andrew Cuomo because we have to. I don't usually like to dwell on the media's crushes because they're so deeply rooted in the media's own imagination and they become used for nefarious purposes to fool the American people. But the figure they're turning Cuomo into is one I have to comment on because it sounds like there's a chance they might actually try to make me vote for him come November. There have been rumblings that because Joe Biden is such an incredibly weak candidate, not just because of his dementia, which continues to advance, but also because he is a rapist and molester whose past will certainly plague him throughout the rest of his campaign, meaning the Democrats will have done what I never even thought possible, which is somehow lose the moral high ground to Donald Trump. And so a Cuomo candidacy is being floated as a trial balloon. I won't even go into the details of how deeply undemocratic it is to crush Bernie Sanders' populist movement and greatest grassroots base in US history to run a candidate whose name didn't appear on a single primary ballot. That's actually not even the point I'm going to try to make here. The media is now touting Cuomo as this great Democratic leader, as the governor of New York, seeing the people of New York through its greatest crisis in a generation with an even hand and a steady, strong demeanor. They're trying to lift him up as the progressive champion the Democrats have been waiting for. But you guys want to know the truth about Cuomo and coronavirus and New York, even just during this latest crisis? New York State is the epicenter of the disease, and the outcomes have shown us just how deeply unequal and segregated the state is, and how deeply unprepared for this crisis that the state was, all because of Cuomo's leadership. In New York, the most impacted and least impacted zip codes are defined by their income levels. The most impacted areas have a median income of $28,000 a year, and the least impacted zip codes earn over $100,000 a year. That's not by accident, and Black New Yorkers are dying at disproportionately higher rates. Also not a coincidence. And just in recent history, literally last week, as the pandemic ravaged the state, Andrew Cuomo cut funding to New York's healthcare system. As he was dealing with a healthcare system that was already devastatingly underfunded, leading to traumatizing an entire generation of doctors and nurses and a jaw-dropping death count, he was still determined to cut funding for the state's most vulnerable people and therefore most susceptible to the disease. He made a big show of fawning over healthcare workers, calling them heroes, but it was his leadership that caused them to do work without sufficient protective equipment. It was his policies that led to ventilator shortages and overcrowded hospitals. He called our doctors heroes, but ignored their pleas for him not to cut Medicaid because that made it harder for them to do their jobs. But it's not about people's well-being for Cuomo. It's all about the media narrative. When Bernie Sanders' campaign was still running, Bernie Sanders held press conference after press conference on coronavirus, speaking to the actual needs of Americans during the crisis. You might think that's newsworthy, huh? A contender for the presidential election conducting incredibly informative last-minute press conferences while his opponent is nowhere to be seen? Nope, instead our mainstream media outlets broadcast Cuomo's press performances for him. Opportunities for Cuomo to act like a leader, pull a brave face as the elites in the media praised his tone, his demeanor. They reported on a fantasy. More discussion of this ephemeral electability that the media determines and dictates, but no discussion of his policies, the true determiner of a public servant's character. Andrew Cuomo is not the impressive progressive leader of the media's imagination. Don't be fooled. When New York was passing its most recent budget during this crisis, he threatened to shut down the health department if his additions weren't passed. He wanted to cut $2.5 billion in state Medicaid funding, forfeiting $6.7 billion in federal aid. He wanted to slash state funding for education to avoid any increase in taxes on the ultra-rich and instead balance the books by cutting already critically underfunded social services. He also gave vast new powers to himself, the ability to further slash spending on a quarterly basis without even consulting the democratically elected legislature. Most state leaders are trying to reduce jail populations right now, because they're breeding grounds for the virus. But Governor Cuomo instead is using the shield of this crisis to roll back newly minted jail reforms and expand judges' power to put people in jail. The criminal justice reforms that were hard fought for by progressives, Cuomo is using this moment to water down that reform in this must-pass disaster budget. At a time when thousands of New Yorkers are dying a day, Cuomo is making sure he's helping his buddies in the prison industrial complex. As Cuomo made grandstanding statements about being apolitical in this moment, he literally said, "Forget the politics. We have a national crisis. We are at war. There is no politics." And as he's saying that, as he's getting the media to portray him as a fighter for the people, as this leader that transcends politics, as he's calling our doctors and nurses heroes and saviors, he's passing legislation to overcrowd jails and cut Medicaid. This is how Cuomo has actually performed during the coronavirus alone. Proof that the pictures our media paints are lies, fiction that continue getting the American people to vote against their self-interests time and time again. And the media is prepping us to accept this false idol as our progressive champion. Do not be fooled.
The first thing this brought to my mind, honestly, is just how much Trump has allowed the Democratic Party to lower our standards completely, whether that's Biden or Cuomo, because like you just pointed out so well, Cuomo has done very little in terms of, effective managing of this crisis. But with him, like, we're still able to say, well, he's done a better job than Trump, like either in rhetoric or, one or two things. And so that that is literally the only argument that we're really hearing for Biden or Cuomo. And so, the Democratic establishment is able to raise up the most corporate right-wing candidates that they can and still make that argument because of how Trump is so terrible.
Because for them, it's all purely aesthetics. Like, the only reason that you could possibly say Andrew Cuomo is more progressive than Biden is because Andrew Cuomo can finish a sentence, and that sentence may be written to sound progressive, and he can finish that sentence. Joe Biden cannot, and so then now Andrew Cuomo is so progressive. Andrew Cuomo is progressive because he still has color in his hair. That means he's young, like the kids. He's progressive. It's all aesthetics, because the moment that you look at his record, you find that, oh my God, he spent his entire time in politics, especially New York politics, crushing the progressive left, all while marauding as one of them, because the media happily gives him that pass, happily participates in that fantasy. And so, like, they could be reporting on Bernie Sanders, who is the true progressive, who is running press conference after press conference, last minute, bringing in experts from across the globe, all around America, activist leaders, speaking to the real needs of, like, the communities that are actually being blighted. Andrew Cuomo is just like, we need ventilate. Like, the fact that he could ask Donald Trump for ventilators, and that is a position of leadership, when it's his own fault there weren't ventilators in the first place. But now people hear him say that and they're like, yeah, he's standing up to Trump. He specifically didn't do his job, but now he's doing it kind of, on TV to make, and like standing up to, it's like, it's all just such lies. And these lies get broadcast so far, and people trust the media so much. Americans are so indoctrinated.
Yeah, and that all out assault on the Bernie Sanders campaign really is the giveaway that they don't care about the policies. They're just trying to find someone that they can make an argument for people to vote for. And so they're calling Andrew Cuomo progressive even when he's not, because it's not about that. And then it makes us wonder, like, well, why Cuomo? Is he the only person in the country who's really handling this well? No. Arguably California Governor I always call him Governor, Gavin Newsom.
Wait, let's call him that. That's what
that actually is what I call him, but I didn't mean to do that just now.
When Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor, he was the governor, and now we've got the Gaviner. The governor and the Gaviner.
Okay, so Governor Gavin Newsom is arguably doing a much better job and is definitely more progressive. So I saw this tweet that was like, it's funny that Democratic voters think that it's their idea to sub Cuomo in for Biden, when it's very clearly, a Democratic establishment and corporate teamwork narrative to push that.
It could be less,
but I am seeing that Cuomo is pulling better than Biden at this point.
I know. And honestly, I'd rather vote for Cuomo over Biden, because they're both corporate hacks, but at least maybe Cuomo will be able to do well against Trump in a debate. But even still, it's like Cuomo ain't clean, and Trump is gonna bring all that up. And Trump is even more shameless than Cuomo. And the whole, like, they go low, we go high. Going high is not just ignoring the other side. Isn't just going, I'm not even, isn't I'm not listening to you. It's going high is arguing with compassion and love and saying, hey, that's a lie. Let me address this problem head on. Going high isn't ignoring your problems. Going high is meeting them head on as an adult. And Cuomo can't do any of those things because he is just as corrupt as the rest of them, which is, again, only Bernie could have held that.
Yeah, it's like the Democratic establishment got behind Biden the second he was the first candidate to really have a big victory in the primaries by winning South Carolina. And then, so from then on, it was like, okay, we need to get rid of Bernie. Now that Bernie has suspended his campaign, they can, figure out how to deal with the Biden problem. And apparently this is the first thing that they're coming out with.
And by the way, the New York Times article today about Tara Reade, the Tara Reade accusation, which no sources were going to talk about it while Bernie was in the race, but now Bernie's gone, and Biden's entire candidacy is going to be about, because by the way, Tara Reade said that Joe Biden just literally grabbed her by the pussy. Literally grabbed her by the pussy. Somebody that does that to somebody, this is not the only person he's done it to. And mark my words, there will be more women that come forward about Joe Biden. Like, I remember when Brett Kavanaugh was first, when the Blasey Ford thing, or maybe Blasey Ford wasn't even the first woman that came forward, but I remember when the first accusation was coming out, they were like, oh, maybe he only did it once. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I guarantee you he has not just done it once. Anyone that does that in the way that he did it has not done it once. Like, the way Joe Biden did it, the way Brett Kavanaugh did it, they did it with joy. They did it with glee. They took what was theirs because they did believe it was theirs to take. They see women as objects. And someone that sees a woman as an object so much that he literally grabs her by her genitalia. Like, when Trump first said grab her by the pussy, I was always confused about the logistics of that. Like, what even is that? And then Tara Reade told us her story, and I was like, oh, that's literally it. Oh my God. And you can see from like literal video footage we have of Joe Biden at the White House touching young girls inappropriately, touching even young boys inappropriately, just touching people inappropriately. And a man who, and yeah, we can blame our sexist culture for raising him in a world where he was led to believe that he was allowed to act like this. That doesn't absolve him from having done it, because guess what? There's other people that grew up in this society, like Bernard fucking Sanders, who didn't do it, who knew, who was strong enough to go, yeah, I know that this culture allows for that, but I'm not going to do that because I have morals that are more important to me than ascending the power ladder and whether or not people like me.
And sexual assault is a crime. And so, like, even though it doesn't look like it's, we so rarely see people who commit that actually prosecuted and facing legal consequences. But so in cases like this, we're not even asking for that. Sadly, we're just asking to not reward this person. That's what we were asking for with Kavanaugh. Like, just don't give him this super prestigious, powerful position. And it's the same thing with Biden. And then on that note, with someone like Cuomo coming in and gaining all this support, we haven't had time to vet him. Who knows what things are in his past? I'm not saying he's, assaulted anyone, of course, but like it took a long time for Tara Reade's story to come out, and Biden has been in the race for like a year or something. So I'm just saying the point of the primaries is to vet these people. It's just so reckless to sub in a new person, and we see that it's because the goal number one was just to get rid of Bernie, and that only just happened the other day. So now it's just like a total shit show.